bring in Dr. Raymond Chidama, who is the Secretary of Progressives Congress from Adamawa State. He's joining us via Zoom. Good to have you join us, Dr. Raymond.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So how is the APC reading this particular situation in the country where we're seeing protests in some parts of the country?
Well, it's a very unfortunate situation. The protest is actually preventable, and with all honesty, it shouldn't even have happened in the first place, since government is taking all measures in order to ameliorate the sufferings and hardship that people are going through.
When you say preventable and shouldn't have happened in the first place, whose responsibility would it have been, or is it to have prevented it to ensure that it doesn't happen?
Yes, when the notice came forward that there's a planned protest, government has already taken very different steps and measures in order to bring about those things that are being addressed. You are aware that government has directed the reopening of our borders so that food can even be brought in. And government has also taken measures in order to bring about inflation. You are also aware that even the local government autonomy that has been a subject of discourse, the present government has already got it signed and the autonomy has come to place. And so there are so many things. Government has started bringing the distribution of food. President has said, like rice now can be purchased at 50 kg rice can be purchased at some certain locations for the sum of 40,000 naira. These are all done in order to bring about the hardship down. The Dangote refinery and other local refineries that the Federal Executive Council has ordered that the crude oil be sold to them in naira. All those measures are measures that will bring down even the petroleum cost. So all that we needed was to wait a little and to see how these things can be harnessed so that these sufferings can be reduced. And so the protest was very, very unnecessary.
So, two questions. First of all, when you say that government has, you have highlighted, what government has done, and government has also continued to highlight what it has done. And then people have said, look, the communication between the time where, the protesters have said that we're going to, it was a proposed protest, a planned protest, to now where it's actually the protest, was a bit defective in that, there was a double communication. On one hand, just a minute, Dr. Raymond. On one hand, people felt like government was saying, be patient with us, don't go out, don't protest. But on the other hand, it also felt like there was a bit of demonizing some of these organizers as well. And so people didn't quite understand which of the communication to take. How do you react to that?
Yes, I'm with you.
I was asking you to react to what people have said was some sort of double communication coming from the government.
No, government has always maintained one stand. You see, we're not being realistic. Nigeria is broke. Nigeria is living on borrowing. And that was how Tinubu came and met it. This man decided to take decisive decisions. And he made it clear that we are going to suffer, but the future generation will have it better. Shall we continue to borrow? Shall we continue to print naira just in order to meet up the economic challenges that we are facing? No, the future will not be augur well for the youth. There's no father that will allow himself to enjoy today so that his children will also suffer in the future. So what the government is trying to do is trying to look at the future than what we're facing today. So government has made it clear that all these measures are to guarantee a future so that our economy can be better. So if we had been maintained the patience, at least we will see what would have happened. So, but people did not listen. And government has clearly stated, the president has said it, and even other public officers have said it. Yes, there is the land, but we must look at what gains we'll get from protest and what we'll not get from protest. Now, we have protested, and we have had it in a very bad way. There are preventable deaths that shouldn't have taken place. There's destruction of public and private properties, looting taking place here and there. Did it solve our problems? So it's better when we come on table and discuss and see what the president is saying and what the government is doing so that the future can be better. I know of one preacher that said even the threats the youth said they are going to protest is enough. They don't need even to go on street. Government has had them and government has taken some measures in order to reduce all those forms of hardship. That's the point I'm trying to say.
Mm. And so when government highlights, as you have also done now, the things that it has done, whether it's the minimum wage, the increase or the student loan and all of that, where's the disconnect? Because people are saying, look, as much as these things have been done, it is not reflecting on our daily living, because for them things are tough. And so where is the disconnect and where are the gaps?
The minimum wage was just signed. No, it's impatience. The minimum wage was just signed last month at the federal level. At the state level, they are yet to be even signed into law, and the local government also. So the implementation process will at least take 1 or 2 months before public servants will begin to see it. The student loan program is already online, it's ongoing, students can apply. So what I'm saying is that we need to be patient. These things, they will all happen and they will take place, but it's going to be gradual. We cannot just solve our problems by violence. The protest, initially, it was meant to be a peaceful protest, but what do you see in most part of Nigeria, especially in the northern parts of the country? It became violent, and this is what we're scared of. At the stage of our nation now, where even the security is very, something that we cannot say is guaranteed, we don't need protests. We don't need things that can stir this kind of emotions that people will now go to street and behave as the way you are doing. Have you seen what is happening in some states whereby public properties are being brought down in the name of protest? Is that a protest?
All right, Dr. Raymond, let me come to Mr. Oyedeji in the studio. You've heard him, because again, government has talked about, the increase in minimum wage from 30,000 to 70,000 naira. They've talked about the student loans. They've talked about the various loan schemes and the various palliatives they've also given to, that are directly through the conditional cash transfer and then through state governors. There was one that was also given through National Assembly that people felt that, a lot of people said, look, and they were talking about how the lawmakers did not also distribute that. In states, people say, look, we're not feeling the impact of these palliatives. In all of this that the federal government has done, where do you think the disconnect is?
Well, let me be honest with you. The government has done a lot. And I agree with Dr. Raymond. The government has done a lot. You see, the reforms portfolio, so it's not, the reforms itself is not a child's play. A lot of things will come. It will come with a lot of attachments. It will come with resentment. It will come with politicization. The political system will try to take advantage of what government is doing. So it's a big amount of all kinds of activities. But government should be focused on the main item. What's the purpose of the reform? The reform is to create efficiency within the economy, address lopsided subsidy, make sure that people do as much as they can and get as much as they can. So that's the essence of the reform. And if you compare the reforms to what we had during President Obasanjo, it's far more rigorous and difficult than we have. President Obasanjo came in and based his reforms on privatization, commercialization. He was able to commercialize a lot of government enterprises, bring in the private sector to run those processes. Government started making more money. He was able to sell government assets directly to all kinds of people. He sold GSM licenses and all the likes. The reforms came with immediate gains. But the kind of reform President Tinubu is doing is a little different. It's delicate and it's difficult. Unfortunately, those reforms are inevitable. He has to do those reforms. He has taken up the burden of doing those reforms on his own. And the only thing he can do is to move ahead, but try as much as he can to give it human face. Now the president is trying to give those reforms human face, but the impact are not felt. It's typical of Nigeria. When you subsidize production, for instance, in Nigeria, you discover that the benefit terminates at the level of production. It does not get to consumers. That's a problem, for instance. I'll give you an example. Government did backward integration with cement and stopped importation of bagged cement. The idea is that we have all the items we need to produce cement. We have the gypsum, we have the limestone, we have all the human beings that can get this thing done. Don't bring in bagged cement. But the moment government did it, everybody became cement producer. They started struggling for cement sites. Then the gross profit on our cement became the highest in the world. So it's one thing for government to have good intention. It's another thing for government to be able to see that you're able to hit the targets. And that's where the problem is in this case. President Tinubu is doing far more in terms of palliatives than any government in history. But you see, we need to look at these initiatives and streamline them as much as possible. There are contradictions. I'll give you one of such. If you are sharing, for instance, 200,000 bags of rice, for instance, you are going to the same market and you are going to mop up the same thing. When demand goes up, prices will go up with it. So in solving the problem, you've created a problem. You want to buy up all the rice in the market and share it to people free of charge. In the process of mopping up rice, prices of rice will go up. You can see the contradiction. So the man that won't get that free rice is left at the mercy of the Shylock who has limited supply and is going to buy at a very high price. So we need to.
But the idea is that government has, a grain reserve where it takes its grains from.
These assumptions, if those reserves are really as big as they should be, we'll feel the impact much more than we do. So look at those interventions. I'll give you another one. If you want to do cash transfer, for instance, the real targets are not getting them. From the last government, all kinds of people are benefiting. Politics, taking the center stage.
So I want to, before I get back to Dr. Raymond, I want you to speak, because you talked about benefits terminating. I want to go back to what you said.
Yes.
And then let's relate it to data. Benefit terminating at the point of production. In terms of governance and looking at the structure,
yes.
At what point is the point of production in terms of governance? There is a federal, there is a state, and there is a local government. You have, of course, we cannot bring in the arms of government, which is judiciary and the legislature. Let's look at the executive, which is the tiers of government rather, federal, state, and local government. Mm-hmm. Where is that point of production that, things tend to terminate?
I was talking generally about governments. See, presently, President Tinubu is providing funding support to pharmaceuticals. And I'm sure, or you are aware, prices of drugs have not come down. Mm. I understand quite well. The impact will not be felt immediately because there is always a cycle of production. There's a logistic side of it. There's a supply chain side to it. Those things take time. And that's why people on the street protesting should be patient. They should exercise more patience. Those impacts will not be felt immediately. But that said, if you are subsidizing a sector, for instance, you must be very sure that the benefit gets to the people. If the benefit terminates at the level of production, you need to reevaluate and review and start afresh. That's very important. How come we pumped so much money into agriculture under President Buhari? We've never done it in the history of this country that we pumped that volume of money directly into agriculture. But unfortunately, prices of food kept going up, and we didn't feel the impact. Rice went up. We started buying rice higher than what we would have bought if we are bringing them from Cotonou or shipping them from Taiwan. Government needs to streamline the process of intervening in different sectors of the economy, especially now that we talk about palliatives, and it seems to be the order of the day. There is a lot of corruption within the cycle. There is a lot of inefficiency within the system, and government must be able to say, this is working, this is not working. We have to be honest with ourselves. Right. Instead of, for instance, giving people rice, for instance, just an example, why don't you give people money and let them decide what they want to do with that money? If you are going to the same market to mop up rice, don't forget it's not only fair.
They have also given money.
Yes, maybe they need to focus on all that. Don't forget that it's not only federal government that is doing palliatives and intervention. Some senators are doing it. Some state governments are doing it. A senator, for instance, that I know shared over 20,000 bags of rice.
Because most of those palliatives also come through or from the federal government,
Yeah.
even through the lawmakers. All right, let me bring Dr. Raymond back in. I'm sure you were listening to Mr. Oyedeji, who was talking about government intervention without proper monitoring and evaluation. And I want to, because that's what a lot of people feel, that, you know, some of this intervention, I was talking about the disconnect earlier, is that whilst even the federal government is doing some of these things, there is no proper monitoring and evaluation to ensure that people who need it, you know, actually get it.
Yes. Hello?
Dr. Raymond, did you get my question?
No, please come again.
So I was asking you to respond to what Mr. Oyedeji said, which is also the notion of some people who say, look, government is doing some things, but it is not getting to the people who need it because there is no proper monitoring and evaluation from the federal government.
Yes, I agree with Mr. Oyedeji, because the fact remains that all these people that government are giving these things through them are stakeholders. For example, giving them to state governors, to members of the National Assemblies, to members of the Federal Executive Council members, all are stakeholders. And all we're saying is that they are trying in their own ways. All we're trying to say is that they can do better to make sure that these things go down to the grassroots level, so that it will not remain among only the elites. Because when it gets down to the sufferer is actually more at the grassroots level. It's the local person that needs these things, not the elites that is in the city. So we will still encourage. There are some state governors that you see they are taking this thing up to the local government, to the ward level. And the same thing with even members of the National Assembly. We shouldn't forget that the population of Nigeria is more than 200 million. So the population is also a problem. We have a very large population. And so the volume of food supplements that can reach everybody is almost impossible. But federal government, as Mr. Oyedeji has said, is doing almost everything possible to reduce the suffering of the populace. And therefore, all we need to do is to exercise some patience and give Mr. President chance. Protest in any way cannot solve our problem now as a nation, because we have serious economic situations.
Dr. Raymond, I want to take a break. When we return, we'll continue with this conversation of proper monitoring and evaluation of government's interventions. Let's take a break now. Standpoint will continue in just a moment. Thanks for staying with us. You are watching Standpoint. We're talking about we're looking at the post-mortem of the protest, nationwide protest so far. Is day 3, and we're looking at all that has played out. People say this could have been avoided, what could have been done, and what should be done going forward. We've been speaking with an economist who has joined me here in the studio, Kayode Oyedeji, and then we also have via Zoom the Secretary of Progressive Congress, Adamawa State, Dr. Raymond Chidama. Thank you both for staying with us.
Thank you very much for having us.
Dr. Raymond, I was having the conversation, as you know, you were answering my question just before that break, but we're talking about the interventions of the president and then the monitoring and evaluation process, which some people have said, look, that's where the challenge is. We've seen the government give as much as, I think it was about 5 billion naira to states, initial 2 billion naira. And then there were grains, you know, taken from the reserve, other rice, you know, gari and all that were given to states. And when you look at the pictures that are coming from some states, it would seem like what looked like, you know, maybe 2 cups of rice being tied, you know, with about maybe 2,000 or 3,000 being given to people. And people felt like, look, that was an eyesore. Why have we not seen the presidency call out some of these state governors to say, this is not the plan. This is supposed to be more effective than this?
Yeah, actually, that area, there is deficiency. And I think the federal government need to do more on that area. A situation whereby when these things are given to either state governors or to the members of the National Assembly, there should be a monitoring process. There should be a special group that will monitor how these things will be distributed and how it will reach the masses. All of us do watch what happens on television. We know some state governors that I don't want to mention names, where you will see each local government, they will go and place these things. You see masses will come, they will come and collect it. They will announce that this money is being shared to so-so and so-so and so-so. You see there's transparency in it. While in other states also, you don't even hear it. And so we wonder, and this is not time of politicking. For example, in our state here, in Adamawa State, we're in opposition at the state level. So, but since the policy says all these things should be given to the state governor, it's expected that when it comes, it will go round. So we expect that when it comes to the state governor, it will reach everybody, irrespective of either your political party or whatever. So there should be a monitoring system in the future when government is going to do these things. And it should start now so that the protest can reduce also.
Dr. Raymond, there are also states where, there are APC states where the governors, are members of the APC. And people have also complained, too, of what you just said, that, when it comes, it will also seem as though it's the APC people who also benefit from these palliatives as well. Is there no mechanism within your own party to ensure that some of your governors are called to order for those who have been found to have been defecting in terms of how they carry out the palliative plan of the president?
Yes, the point I'm making here is not referring to any political party. You see, there are other stakeholders in the system. When a state governor receives items, for example, there are other methods he can use, maybe the traditional rulers. It can get down even to the ward level. He can use the religious leaders, either the Christian leaders or the Muslim leaders. It will still get to the rural level. But even at that, there's the need to monitor that these things have actually reached the target audience. If not, some people will still hijack it, keep it in their houses where actually they don't even need it. And so this is what we're saying. We have a kind of decay in the system. It's not as if these governors, they are keeping these things to themselves. They do push it down, but there are some people that are still hijacking it. Some even find their way to the market and to be sold to the poor masses of the country again. So in this area, what I'm saying is that the government needs to do more so that such relief materials get to the people that actually desire them.
Let me come to you. I mean, he raised a very interesting point. Really, you'll be surprised that some of those, grains being sold in the market are also part of the palliative, plans, of the federal government, because some people at some point have hijacked it and they sell, and then other people go sell instead of actually getting to the people who need it. And those are the people who are now complaining and saying, look, things are tough. But I wanted to speak more to the reforms, because when you look at the demands of the protesters, they basically center on the reforms. Some have talked about the reversal of the fuel subsidy. They talked about the electricity tariff. Just around the reforms of this administration. And I wanted to speak to it.
Okay, two things. The first one is on the palliatives. I think the federal government needs to change the dynamics. Sharing grains, they don't seem to work. By the time you divide, for instance, 20,000 bags of rice or thereabouts, each household, if you're interested, you get a small thing of rice. They mock government and move on. They are never grateful for it, and they are not going to be grateful for it. To them, it's tokenism. It's like a drop of water
in the ocean.
So they don't tend to appreciate it. And when politicians do the same thing, they believe politicians is sharing their money with them too. So that's understanding. That psycho side of it should be well understood. People don't appreciate those things, and they don't care about them. They just see that it's part of their largest national cake.
Because when you send it, just to your point, when you send it, it looks like a lot.
A lot.
Because you've sent maybe
when it gets to households,
by the time you get to households,
it becomes too ridiculous. So government needs to change the dynamics. Instead of giving them rice, grains, and all this stuff, begin to look at buying tractors and sharing it among stakeholders, especially states and local governments, and follow that they are using those tractors for the purpose. They are not diverted to a big man. And the interesting thing about things like tractor, even if a big man hijacks it, he has to use it to put it to YouTube to earn benefit from it. And before you use that tractor, you must cultivate a particular portion of land. So government should be looking at those things. For instance, if government decides to make fertilizer as cheap as possible or even free, if you get fertilizer and you keep it in your house that you've gotten palliative, you must be a very funny man to do that. You must put it to use. So government should begin to look at those items instead of sharing rice today and tomorrow. Those things are not effective. I don't believe in them. I don't share that stuff. Tokenism, and they're ineffective. That's number one. The other problem which we have with government policies and the reform is information is important. I connect to the market, for instance, because I track commodity prices, and that makes it compulsory for me to pay regular visits to markets. And when you gather market women and market stakeholders, and they complain to you because they feel you can explain some of their predicaments to them, and you tell them, they tell you, oh, government has increased energy tariff. Then you go into long session of lectures for them and say, how much, Mr. A, how much is your power tariff? Say, I used to spend 20,000, now I spend 40,000. Government is saying cost reflective. That means your 40,000 before government was paying 20,000 on your behalf, unknown to you. Then you now go to another class of people. Maybe in the highbrow areas, somebody was spending 300,000 on their electricity. Government has now placed him on bad aid to reflect the cost adequately, and is now paying 900,000 per month. That means government was giving him 600,000 by way of subsidy. That subsidy was not meant for the rich, it was meant for the poor. Whereas the poor man in Ajegunle only gets 10,000 naira of that subsidy. The big man in Asokoro gets 700,000 naira of the subsidy.
So instead of total, because some people are saying go back to the property.
No, I'm even coming to a particular position.
I will let you just add this question to it before I get back to Dr. Raymond. Instead of saying let's remove, tariff, couldn't it have been possible for government to say, let's subsidize? I mean, these areas have now been mapped out, where you have band A to band E, and so we know the areas are band E to subsidize for those areas.
You see, yes, I agree with you. This is where I'm coming to. The man on the street doesn't understand what government has done. The government is doing income redistribution. Government is addressing income inequality by removing subsidy on electricity. It's a big hit on him because he has low income. It's a bigger hit on the big man who has created a lot of avenues to use government free money. So government is doing the right thing, but government must be able to explain these things to an average Nigerian to understand. So communication. Communication. That means that thing must go down to the very, very low level, the grassroots. You must be able to tell them that, see, government was giving you 10,000 before, but your brother in Asokoro was collecting 900,000 from government for the same thing. So government is saying, no, subsidy is not meant for the big man. It's meant for you. Unfortunately, because government has cancelled his own, your own is affected. So you are not the primary target. You are just, and when government solves, now it will ask you, well, there are benefits. When you take this 900,000 naira from the big man, you apply it back into social services, into healthcare, giving them free drugs, giving them fertilizer, giving them good roads. Unfortunately, the biggest tragedy is that people can't connect to those things because those benefits are not obvious or are not existing. So if government takes away 900,000 naira from electricity tariff of a big man, government is saying, I'll apply it back to give you healthcare, and the man gets to the hospital, he has to pay for the same drugs, or he can't access a doctor, he can't access proper. Then this is where the problem is. As government is undertaking these reforms, which are inevitable, which are important, government must now begin to make sure that the benefits of these reforms don't go back to the big people. There is an elite conspiracy in Nigeria. So as long as that thing continues, people feeding for the offices, feeding fat of government revenue and not being able to provide services for the same one you've taken more money on petrol, more money on energy from, there is a problem. And that problem has to be addressed. People will wait for so long, but people must be patient. The reforms President Tinubu is pursuing, they are inevitable. They will make government to be efficient. They will make the economy to be better in the long run. But like Adam Smith said, he said in the long run, we are all dead. People want immediate respite. People want something that will say, okay, I'm paying more for fuel. But when I got to the hospital, I was able to access free drugs. I was able to access drugs because I was a poor man. I was able to travel. The road in my neighborhood has been tarred. My little car, I don't spend so much on it again. The school in my neighborhood, you see, the dilemma of Nigeria is clear. An average man is dropping dead in Nigeria every day because of the pressure he or she has to go through. Why do you think people still have to go to private schools when in actual fact their counterparts in the UK, in Canada, they relocate there and they enjoy free education for their kids? These are the things. As government is taking this away, this one must come back.
I want Dr. Raymond to react to what you have said because it's very interesting. Dr. Raymond, you've listened to Mr. Ayedeji. He's saying if these reforms are okay, but if you're making gains from these reforms, for example, the fuel subsidy removal, government is not making money from that. We've seen that through the allocation to states, that perhaps some of these should be plowed back to services that people can benefit from. He mentioned education and he mentioned healthcare. I just wanted to respond to what he has said.
Yes, that's actually what the present federal government is targeting. When we reduce all these excesses that are going in forms of subsidies, and we're able to get more change, it will now be plowed back into the economy in order to bring about physical development so that people can see things better. When the
Dr. Raymond, if I may come in, when will that be? Because some of these gains are already been made, and we are seeing it in terms of increased allocation to states, but not necessarily in terms of being plowed back to several sectors. And people are saying, instead of giving this monies to state, why not put it into different sectors so that people can actually benefit from it?
There is a sharing formula, and the rule of law must be followed. So all that we need to call on the state governors to begin to do what is necessary. That's plowing those resources into the areas that they are needs. And another thing that people are underrating is this local government autonomy. Very soon, when this full implementation of this local government autonomy comes into place, you will see more development, more infrastructure at the local level. And most of these tensions will douse that because it's a huge resources that are supposed to come to the rural areas at the local government level, but has not been reaching them. So the federal government has taken a bold step by bringing this into action. Therefore, we will be encouraging the state governors, for example, to also begin to intervene in those areas that Oyedeji has mentioned, the education, the health, the roads, and other things, so that you don't even need to use your own car if you are going to travel. The commercial cars can get you to where you need to. You don't need to send your child to a very expensive private school when government school can also do what the private schools can do. These are the kind of interventions that we need in this country that will bring about a middle class even back into the system again, not only the poor people.
And Dr. Raymond, before I bring in Mr. Ayedeji for his final thoughts, people have been calling on the president to address the nation. That doesn't seem to have happened. Do you think that this is a critical time for the president to address the nation?
He's in charge. I'm sure at the right time he will do it if it is very necessary.
All right. Mr. Ayedeji, let's get your final thoughts. Again, speak to what is the most important thing that the government should be doing now that will have an impact, on all of us, and how tough things are. Then I also wanted to speak to if this protest continues, because they've said 10 days, what could be the economic impact of it? Okay.
Let me say there's an endorsement for President Tinubu's reforms. He has handled the issue with equanimity and humility, and he deserves commendation for that. And if you watch what he has done so far, he has good intentions. He's bold about undertaking those reforms, because if those reforms are not taken, governors will collapse, especially at the state level. He needs now to find the mechanism to ensure that state and local governments, who are the beneficiaries of 48%, almost approximately half of federally collectible revenue, that they are doing the right thing. Like I talked about health sector, for instance, people at the grassroots will assess public health centers, the PHCs. If they get there and they get drugs, they're happy. Why not say, okay, let's make drugs compulsory and free for everybody, make it widely and publicly known as much as you can. Go, if you have common headache, please, we're happy to attend to you. Get the governors.
The diseases that have
yes,
high fatality rate.
Fatality rate. Get the doctors to have buy into this. The governors, are playing, I don't want to say they are playing on intelligence of the federal government. They smite to bank every month, but the president faces the music every day. They collect a lot of money from federation accounts. They can hardly, nothing has changed. They still go about announcing inflated jumbo contracts that will not see the light of the day. They are not rising up to their risk. See, education is on concurrent list. That means federal, state, and local government, all of them are involved. The secondary school in my neighborhood should be equipped well enough for every young family in my neighborhood to go. With that, we will not be spending 1 million naira every day paying Shylock schools as school fees. If that is taken away from the burden of the middle class, they are happy. Unfortunately, it is not the president that will address that problem. The president has made provision.
Also taking advantage of, the fact
the president has
the public schools are in good condition.
The president has made provision by all his policies for state government to be able to fix the schools. So we need to have a sensitized public, an informed public, enlightened public that can take ownership of local government, for instance, begin to place demands on them, take authority of that tier of government. Make sure that if you don't approve of any man becoming your councillor or your chairman, you don't give them any room through the electoral process to occupy an office. You see, I'll give you an instance before I round up. In my hood, in my neighborhood, former governor body closed a street for 3 years. They wanted to rebuild the road. When they eventually opened the road for public usage, it was littered with pothole. Ordinarily, the CDA, members of that community should be able to hold placards. Don't wait till the president increased fuel price before you hold placards. You should be able to have a public sensitization and say, Mr. Governor, this is not acceptable. This is an abuse. You are playing on our intelligence. You are taking advantage of our patients. So the people at the grassroots must take ownership of governance. It is very important.
Thank you so much for your time. Just a lot to talk about here. I wish we can talk about it. Time is never enough. But thank you both for the time.
Thank you very much for having me.
The Secretary of the All Progressives Congress in Adamawa State, Dr. Raymond Chidama, thank you so much for your time. And
thank you very much.
Thank you. And also an economist, Mr. Oyedeji, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, you've been watching Standpoint. Remember, you can catch a repeat broadcast, or you can watch the repeat broadcast at 11 p.m. tonight and at 5 a.m. on Sunday morning. We'll continue to monitor the situation across the country and bring you reports on the development as we get them. I am Precious Amayo. Thanks for watching.